Hello everyone, and welcome to another video, and I'm here to talk about my favorite series of all time. So let's check it out. This has been a video that's been long overdue. If anyone knows me personally, you guys know that I'm a huge Castlevania fan. And I just want to take the time to kind of talk about some of my memories of the series and, thinking back about it. When I first played the very first Castlevania on the NES, it had a very special feeling because the first time I played it, first time I got it, was actually at the very first video game store I had ever been at. There used to be a store right up the road from where I live at now called The Game Plan, and this was kind of like the precursor to stores like GameStop and EB Games. A store that specialized in video games, and that was something very new at that time. And at that time I was really into Universal horror movies like Bela Lugosi and Dracula, or Boris Karloff and The Mummy and Frankenstein. I was a huge fan of monster movies, and I was also really getting into shows like Conan the Barbarian and Beastmaster and He-Man. So when I saw the cover of the very first Castlevania with almost like a barbarian hero battling the castle of Dracula, and Dracula smiling in an evil silhouette in the background, I thought that was really cool. When I took it home and started playing it, and it was very hard. Like, I died so many times. It's still one of the hardest games I've ever played on the NES, but I absolutely loved it. Now, of course, whenever I would find out about a new sequel or anything like that when it came to Castlevania, I was right on it. So I ended up getting all three Castlevanias, and these are just timeless classics. I think anyone that wants to collect for the NES, or anyone that has an NES, you deserve to have these three games in. And the first one, absolutely loved it. It was my introduction to the whole series. I have to say, the second one, it gets a lot of flack. At the time when I played it as a kid, it wasn't my favorite game because, honestly, I didn't understand it, because it was totally different compared to the first Castlevania. But my favorite Castlevania out of all these three would have to be Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse. Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse went back to the style of the first Castlevania with level-based gameplay, but where this shines from its past titles was the introduction of different characters. Not only did you get to play as Trevor Belmont, but you had a noble thief named Grant, a sorceress named Sifo Belnance, and the introduction of a fan favorite who would star in a later blockbuster title, Alucard. Now, a couple years later, I went and got myself a Super Nintendo. And, what I really liked about the Super Nintendo when it first launched is it took a lot of famous titles from the NES library and beefed them up. I mean, yeah, they used that whole gimmick of super this, super that, but it really did make the point. The games really were a lot better. They were super. And, of course, without introduction, that's when they came out with one of the best Castlevanias on the 16-bit consoles, Super Castlevania 4. Super Castlevania 4 was the first 16-bit title, and the gameplay was faster and improved. Now Simon Belmont could whip swing to get the platforms, and the whip can be used in 8 different directions. And Konami even beefed up the graphics using some of the Mode 7 that the SNES was best known for. And I also want to make an honorable mention, the Castlevania Bloodlines on the Sega Genesis. I think this is a very underrated Castlevania. It really is overshadowed by Super Castlevania 4 on the Super Nintendo, but this one here, it was the first Castlevania that had blood, had an awesome soundtrack, and a lot of the themes was reused in later Castlevanias like Circle of the Moon or even Portrait of Ruin. Also, what was really cool about this game is they mixed Bram Stoker folklore with Castlevania, because this was the first Castlevania that you weren't playing as a Belmont. You were playing as John Morris, who was the son of Quincy Morris, who we all know was the guy who killed Dracula in Bram Stoker's novel. So I thought it was really cool that they tied that together. You also had Elizabeth Bathory, who was a real figure, and she was really freaking evil, bathing in virgin's blood. But she was a vampire in this one and helped summon the Dark Lord Dracula. This is definitely a fun game, and highly recommend you guys check it out if you haven't already.
Koji Igarashi would bring Castlevania to a new generation with a brand new life. Symphony Night did away with level-based and almost took aspects of Castlevania 2 back into the fold, and this is a direct sequel to Rondo of Blood from the PC Engine.
Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Now, this is easily in most people's top 10 favorite PlayStation games of all time, and rightfully so. It was a groundbreaking title, not only for Castlevania, but for, old school video games, because at this time Castlevania it was getting kind of washed up, it was a lot of the same old, and it really gave it something new. And what I really liked about it was the fact that it was a very long game, and it had so much that you could do in it, so much to explore. I remember beating the game the first time, and I thought it had the worst ending ever, and then I found out that you could actually flip the castle over and get a better ending. And the fact that you could go back and play as Richter Belmont, which almost was like a homage to old school Castlevania games with the Belmont whip, I thought that was really, really cool. Not to mention, this game has some of the best voice acting I've ever heard in a video game since. Alucard! But no, in all seriousness, my favorite memory of Symphony of the Night is how I got the game in the first place. Because this is back before it was on the 360 arcade, or the PSN, and before it was on the PSP with Dracula X Chronicles. It was a very sought after game. And I was working at Babbage's at the time, that's now, of course, known as either EB Games or GameStop. But they had just stopped taking PlayStation 1 and N64 games. And I was working one weekend, and this kid comes in with a shoebox full of various PS1 games, and he was looking to trade some of them in. And I told him, I was like, man, I'm sorry, we don't take these games anymore. But something told me to see what kind of games he had. So I was like, well, let me see what you have. So I'm sitting there, and it was inside of a little shoebox, going through them, and I see like sports titles, NASCAR, Test Drive, Spyro, the usual. I saw that stuff every day, but I saw a black label, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and I'm telling you guys, very few moments I've had to do this buying video games, but I had to put on my poker face and do some shady stuff. So I tell the kid, I'm like, hey, I'm about to go on my lunch break in about 10 minutes. I'll buy this game off of you. I'll buy it off of you for $10, And granted, he probably would have gotten that much from GameStop anyway, because we all know GameStop doesn't really give a whole lot towards trade-in credit. You have to trade a lot of games to go towards a new game. So I bought, at the time, it was over $100. I bought, a $100 plus game for $10. And not only that, but it was something to complete my Castlevania collection. And to this day, this is one of my favorite finds I've ever had when it came to game chasing or game hunting. And another PlayStation game that I wanted to mention that was a Castlevania game that I don't think a whole lot of people played was Castlevania Chronicles. Now this was a lot of fun. It was, it had that Symphony of the Night art style to it, but it was pretty much almost a revamp of the very first Castlevania, and it had updated soundtrack. It was more of techno and house mix than your stereotypical like organ with heavy metal. It was very different. I really liked it, and it was a very good game. It was really hard, and this is still one of the Castlevania games I still haven't beaten yet, but it's still a lot of fun. And if you're a huge fan of Symphony of the Night, you owe it yourself to try these handheld classics. The Castlevanias on the Game Boy Advance and the Nintendo DS took that Metroidvania style formula and took it to a whole new level. These are very enjoyable games, and most of them are pretty affordable, and you can find them at a good price. And we all know it would only take a matter of time before Castlevania would do some more venturing off on its journey of being a great gaming series, and where they took their take onto 3D games. And through some trial and error, I don't like to act like these games exist, by the way. Don't like these. They did come out with some decent 3D Castlevanias. I really appreciated what Lament of Innocence had to offer. I thought was a pretty decent game. Wasn't the best game of all time. Certainly not the best Castlevania. But it was still a very good game, and it was one of the first titles that I got for the PS2. I really, really enjoyed it. But my favorite 3D Castlevania would have to be Curse of Darkness.
Curse of Darkness was very enjoyable in the sense that showed Konami was starting to get the hang of having a 3D Castlevania, and the introduction of the innocent devils gave the game almost a Pokemon feel to these devilish familiars.
Now I always tell people that if a company wants me to buy their system or anything like that, they need to make an exclusive Castlevania, because case in point, I never had the intention of owning a PSP back when it came out. I was perfectly happy with my DS. I wasn't making a whole lot of money at the time, only had a part-time job. And of course, this is back when I was working at GameStop, and they were telling me that they were coming out with Dracula X Chronicles.
Dracula X Chronicles for the PSP was the first US gamers could play Rondo of Blood from the PC Engine. Until then, we only had the watered-down version on the SNES called Dracula X. The PSP remastered this game with better graphics, voice acting, and it's a must-play for old-school Castlevania fans.
Now, one thing cool about Castlevania games is 9 times out of 10 they always have a pre-order bonus of some sort. At least the last couple titles did. They would at least have like a soundtrack or something like that. But when I pre-ordered Castlevania Dracula X Chronicles on the PSP, I got this limited edition Simon Belmont 2 little figurine, and it's still wrapped up. I never opened it because, you know, I remember I got this and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. It's kind of weird that it's Castlevania 1 with Simon from Castlevania 2, but I mean, that's freaking awesome. Also, because I worked at GameStop at the time, my coworkers were looking at me like I was freaking insane because I wanted to take this home, and I was like, hey, can I have this? And they're like, sure, why not? But it's the Castlevania Dracula X Chronicles, you know, preview box, you know? Like, I always thought that was like one of my favorite versions of Dracula. And, you know, you look on the back and it's kind of like the advertisement and stuff like that. So, it, you know, it's nothing but just, you know, a little bit of cover art, a little bit of art, but this is still really, really cool. Now, Castlevania itself has finally had another reboot. It's this third in its series, because, you know, I consider the classic Castlevanias, the Metroidvanias, and now we have Lord of Shadows. And I remember when I first got my copy of Lord of Shadows, I got the limited edition, and it's really cool. It comes in a, you know, hard cover, and it's got like a little art book, 2 discs. It's got like the little soundtrack to it as well. I really, really enjoyed this game. Some people gave it flack, but I took it in knowing that it was a reboot, knowing that it was something different, that it wasn't going to be playing like Symphony of the Night or any of the previous titles. It was a brand new Castlevania, so I really enjoyed it. What I felt really bad about, though, was me and one other person were the only people who pre-ordered it at the time, and I was the only one who got the special edition. Now, granted, this is around the time that Halo Reach and Black Ops was coming out, so I think a lot of people were just throwing their money at those. But also what was really cool is they got this really awesome pre-order t-shirt as well, with the you know, the cross whip and the insignia that Gabriel Belmont wore. And it's a really cool shirt. I can't really wear it anymore, it's a little too small, but it's really, really awesome. But anyway, guys, that's some of my memories of Castlevania, and I could have went longer with this video talking about every single title and how much I love this series, but I want to stick to the games that I have the fondest memories of, and that's where I want you guys to come in. I want you guys to leave a comment below telling me what's your favorite Castlevania, what's some of your favorite Castlevania memories. I'd love to hear from you. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching, and thanks for subscribing, and as always, happy gaming.